Good morning, my dear student. Today we discuss something about the treatment of stock. The treatment of stock is our basic concept of the cost sheet. So normally the cost sheet is a very useful to the businessman. Whether it's a small to large level businessman should be utilized the cost sheet. The cost requires the special treatment while the preparing the cost sheet. Stock may be the raw material, work in progress, and the finished goods. So normally the cost sheet is a clearly defined the two concept. One is the prime cost, another that will be in a second cost, secondary cost. The prime cost is nothing but only the direct expenses to be included. Say an example, direct material, direct expenses, and direct labor. Above the prime cost to be called as the secondary cost or overhead. The overhead that will be in a three steps. One is the factory, another one office and administration expenses. The third one that will be in a selling and distributions. The both the direct and indirect to be called as the total cost or the cost of sales. We can add the profit that to be called as a cost of sales. But even though the stock may be classified the three categories. So one is the raw material, another work in progress, and the finished goods. Both each and every category there will be a opening and a closing. The raw material is the basic things. You can manufacture the any commodity, any product. The material is the playing the vital role under the material opening and closing. During the work in progress, that will be in a semi. The semi means the work should be on progress. The work in on progress is also divided by two, opening work in progress and the closing work in progress. The third one to be called as the finished good. The finished goods before going to the godown. And the finished goods, we have finished all the commodity. The finished goods is divided by two, opening and the closing. The treatment of stock that will be in a three category. First, the raw material. Raw material of all types of are initially recorded into the inventory asset account with the debit to the raw material inventory account and the credit to the accounts payable account. When the raw material concerned, the accounting treatment varies depending on the status of direct or indirect material. The opening stock of material, first thing, we have add to the purchase of raw material. Then after we are adding the raw material, less to the closing stock of raw material that will be called raw material consumed or the direct material. This is the preliminary step to the cost sheet. Then apart from that, you have add to the direct labor and the direct expenses that will be called as a prime cost. The first part of raw material, whether you have included the main thing, the opening that will be in a debit, the closing that will be in a credit. So the debit should be added, the closing should be the deducted. Then number two, stock of work in progress. The amount of work in progress, I already told that this is the during the process, during the work, not to raw material, not to the finished goods. The excess of opening balance of work in progress over the closing work in progress. So normally the opening should be added in the prime cost. But the work in progress come under the purview of the factory overhead. So we have added to the prime cost what are the actual the factory expenses. Say in a factory fuel, the factory water, the factory manager salary regarding to the factory expenses. In addition to the factory expenses, we have added to the opening stock of WIP. Then automatically we have deducted to the closing stock of work in progress that will be called factory cost or manufacturing cost or work cost. This is the playing the vital role in the cost sheet. Without the labor or without the works, we cannot do anything. So this is the basic, the secondary, the items. The third one that will be in finished goods. So normally the finished goods it's one of the indirect expenses. I think the finished good come under the purview of the indirect expenses. You can add to the factory that to be office and administration you have add that to be called the real cost of productions, but it is not the cost of goods sold. So the treatment of stock of finished goods should be carried over in between the opening stock and the closing stock and adjusted among them before the finding the cost of goods sold. The cost of goods sold is the real expenditure. Apart from that, we have add to the selling and distribution, that to be final, that to be called the total cost. So before the godown entry or the warehouse entry, that to be called the cost of goods sold. Same like the opening stock of finished goods we have added and the closing stock of finished good we have deducted. That will be called cost of goods sold. Then automatically the routine procedure we have add to the selling and distribution, that will be called the total cost. Then you can add the profit, that will be called cost of sales. Whether we have converted into the per unit or the total amount also. So this is the basic idea related to the stock of the treatment of stock. Thank you very much.